Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to talk a little bit about P-EBT. We're going to get started right here at 2. We appreciate everyone's time to join us and know that we all have a lot to do right now, especially. So we want to make sure we maximize your time and use every minute to really share all that we know about P-EBT. So this webinar is going to cover the 2021-2022 Pandemic Electronic Benefit Transfer P-EBT program that is in place. Our team, the Nebraska Department of Education and Nutrition Services, has been working hard with the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services to get this plan approved and then to share this information with you. My name is Jenna Hilligoss, and I am one of the team members on the Nutrition Services team. I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues, along with some team members from the DHHS side, and we will be here to talk through P-EBT and help answer questions that you have. This next slide is just some brief housekeeping information. We ask that you mute your microphone. That will help reduce any feedback or background noise that you maybe have wherever you found a spot to join us today. And it's also okay to turn on your camera if you're joining from a computer or from a smartphone. Also okay to have that camera turned off, whatever works best for you in whatever space you're in. There is the option to type questions that you might have in the chat box here within Zoom. You can also wait until the end of the presentation and unmute your microphone and share those questions out loud. You'll notice at the end we'll have a Q&A session screen that will pop up, and that's kind of the indication that it's okay to unmute that microphone and share questions that you have with us. We have tried to include some frequently asked questions throughout the presentation, and we hope that might be helpful with questions that you do have. We will also be working on putting up some resources on the Nutrition Services homepage, including recording of this webinar, the slides that you're seeing now, and then an FAQ document as well. We hope to have those resources available by the end of the week. And all of these things in combination, certainly we're hoping that you feel more informed and confident about P-EBT for this year. We wanted to ensure that we started with a huge thank you to everyone on this Zoom call. It is the SFAs, the school food authorities, that we have to thank for all of these P-EBT benefits having been issued over these past 2 years. You'll see a couple figures here that maybe do it justice, but also tremendous time and effort from you to get to this point. Over $76 million have gone out in the state of Nebraska alone for P-EBT benefits just in the 2020-21 school year. And as many of you know, this has been going on since, prior to that time period. So overall amounts is an even higher number than that. Then you'll see that second figure, 88,000, over 88,000 school children within Nebraska received these benefits just during the 2021 school year. That does not include any overlap with benefits that went out this summer. And, we really can't say enough how much we appreciate the immense time and effort that it's taken from every school district to get these families this money that has certainly made a tremendous impact within their household. Here's our agenda for this hour that we get to spend together. First, we will go over the P-EBT process just to make sure everyone feels good about how this process has been moving for the past couple of years. We'll dive into more of the specifics then with the 21-22 plan. We'll talk about eligibility, different benefit levels, uploading into the portal, the issuance calendar, reconsideration process, and then we'll highlight important contacts that you can use to direct the questions that you have, and then also household questions to the correct people. And we'll end with a Q&A session. So hopefully time to ensure all of your questions are answered today related to P-EBT. All right, so we'll get started here with the P-EBT process. P-EBT, there have been, as many of you know, many iterations of P-EBT benefit distribution throughout Nebraska over these past 2 years. But one thing has really remained the same, and it's this 4-step process, and we'll continue to utilize this in the 21-22 P-EBT distribution. It starts with you, with the School Food Authority. We appreciate your work in uploading eligible student data into the NDE portal. From there, our team at NDE reviews this data with a particular focus on ensuring the students that are receiving benefits are free or reduced and enrolled at the school that uploaded them for issuance. We then pass that data on to DHHS, and they do a secondary review of the students. They also do pretty extensive testing with all the benefits that are set to go out to ensure step 4 here goes as planned when DHHS is working with a card distributor who issues these funds directly to households through EBT cards. Again, this process has remained in place, but with each year, as we'll talk about here on the next slide, there's been slight modifications that change what this process looks like. Some very, very basic information about the 2021-2022 P-EBT plan. These benefits will cover August of 2021 through May 2022, so the current school year that students are enrolled in right now. These benefits will continue to be issued based on data that the school food authorities provide us, uploaded into the NDE portal. And although we wish we could tell the future, we do not know what summer 2022 will bring. I don't think any of us, at least on this side, anticipated, P-EBT to continue for the duration that it has. And so we are kind of along for the ride, and we will certainly let you know what we find out about summer 2022 as soon as we are able to. We'll just dive in now to start talking about the eligibility requirements for the 21-22 P-EBT issuance year. There are going to be 2 distinct levels in place for a school and then a student to qualify and be able to be issued P-EBT benefits. The first level is broader. It's a school level or school building, more specifically qualification. In order for students that are enrolled at an individual school building to receive P-EBT, at least one enrolled student at that school will need to have a 5 consecutive day COVID-related absence. This student can be in any meal price category, so this can be a paid student, this can be a reduced student, or it can be a free student. Once a single student, at least a single student, or possibly more, meets this qualification of a 5 consecutive day COVID-related absence, other students at that school are possibly eligible for P-EBT if they meet these kind of secondary student level qualifications. You'll notice that this absence needs to be COVID-related, and that's kind of a term that we will dive into a little bit further within the presentation today to explain a little bit more what that means. The second piece is student level qualification. So after the school meets the first broader school level qualification, each individual student is going to need to meet these 2 criteria you see on your screen now. The first is that these students need to be eligible to receive free or reduced priced meals for the 21-22 school year. This can mean a student qualifies through the submission of a household income application, or it can be that a student qualifies through direct certification. So a student qualifies for free or reduced meals, and that student also needs to have experienced a COVID-related absence during that specific month. You'll notice that bottom bullet indicates, that the school is going to provide NDE with the number of absence days within that month. So a school qualifies, and then for a student to be issued benefits, they need to meet both of these 2 qualifications. It is important to highlight that in order for students to receive P-EBT benefits for that month, they needed to have been qualified for free or reduced price meals. And so as an example, let's say you had a household that didn't submit an application until December. The students would not be able to receive P-EBT benefits at any point prior to the submission of that application, regardless of whether the school had met the school level eligibility requirement. So we wanted to provide a little more information on what it means to have a COVID-related absence. And you can see here on your screen that we have broken that up into two kind of different categories and two different directed absences that would fit into that COVID-related absence category. On the left side of your screen, you'll see a school-directed absence. And so this means that the school is directing either the individual student, classroom, building, or entire district to be closed due to a COVID-related reason. This does not have to mean that an individual student had a positive COVID test. This can be all-inclusive of any absence or closures related to COVID. So this might include a building being closed because there were not enough teachers to staff that building because of a COVID outbreak. This could be a classroom being closed because a majority of those students were reported as out anyways because of COVID. Or it could be something as large as some of the cleaning days or COVID relief days that some districts have enacted over this past year. All of those absences fit into that school-directed absence category. On the right side, you'll see the parent-directed absence, and this is a little bit more specific, unique to the household, but it's an absence directed by the parent or guardian that kept the student away from school, not physically present in the school building. These are just a few reasons. There's certainly more that could be added to this list. The student was exposed to COVID, the student tested positive for COVID. As families start to kind of get back to regular life and, other activities outside of school, it might be due to a travel quarantine that they aren't able to physically be at school. And then that last option, learning remotely due to COVID concern. For any students that have the option to learn remotely, you need to ensure that it's due to COVID that they aren't physically present within the school building. Here is an example of meeting the school level eligibility requirement. So as a reminder, this is when each school building is required to have one student out for 5 consecutive days due to a COVID-related concern. So the student in question here, you'll see, was absent on the days with an orange A. So the student was absent September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 7th, and 8th. The 5 consecutive days as seen in this calendar would not include weekend days, so Saturday and Sunday would not count. And also in this example, any school holidays, including Labor Day, cannot be counted into the 5 consecutive day absence. So in this example, the student would meet the qualification, and students within that school, if they meet the additional student level requirements, will qualify for benefits on the first day of this absence, which is September 1st. I will note here, if the student had only been gone the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 7th, they would not have met that 5-day consecutive requirement. That would only be 4 days, not including weekends and holidays. And as always, with any of these specific situations or questions that you might have, please get in touch with our office. We'll include contact information later in the PowerPoint. But if you have, questions and you're not sure how to proceed with situations about eligibility, please let us know, and we're happy to talk one-on-one through those unique situations everyone has been in. We'll dive now into some frequently asked questions, and these are all going to center around eligibility and then COVID-related absence. So, as an example, an enrolled student has met the school level requirement. When can students be issued P-EBT benefits? And you'll see here that eligible students enrolled at that school can start to receive P-EBT benefits on the first day of the 5 consecutive day absence. That last example was a good representation of this. The first day that 5-day absence started is when other students, as long as they meet student level requirements, are able to receive P-EBT benefits for that month. Another frequently asked question, can students attending Community Eligibility Provision or CEP schools be issued P-EBT benefits? The answer is yes. The CEP school, just like all other schools, will be required to meet the school eligibility guideline, where a student is out for 5 consecutive days. Once that has happened at that unique CEP school building, all of the students are eligible to receive benefits for COVID-related absences that they might have during that month. Another frequently asked question. So in this example, none of the school district's buildings were closed and no students experienced a 5 consecutive day absence or reduced attendance due to COVID. Do students within that school district, or more specifically school building, qualify for PEBT? So if that school level eligibility requirement is never met, none of the students in that school qualify for 21 or 22 PEBT benefits. It's critical that a school building meet that requirement before you can start looking at individual students for benefit issuance. Also, another thing to kind of remember here is that that school level eligibility, that broader first eligibility requirement, that can be met at any point during the school year. That could have been met in August, could have been met in December, and it could also be met, later this month, even here in March. That requirement doesn't have a set timeline, just needs to be met during the school year. And from that point on, students within that school building can qualify and be issued PEBT benefits if they meet the specific student requirements. All right, another frequently asked question. A student didn't experience a 5 consecutive day absence due to COVID until September. Can students receive benefits for August? So no, students cannot receive benefits for months prior to their school meeting the school level eligibility requirement. All right, a few more frequently asked questions here. This one is that COVID-related absence. Can remote students be issued PEBT benefits? Do they qualify for 21-22 benefits? And the answer is yes. In order for any student to qualify, including those that are remote, that school and student qualification must be met, and remote learning must be COVID-related. We do want to note and bring emphasis to the online learning academies. These are learning academies that typically cannot participate in the National School Lunch Program. And because of that, students at these schools are not eligible for PEBT benefits. If you have any questions about your specific school district, or a learning, academy that you operate, please get in touch with our office and we'll be able to provide some clarity as to whether your students would be eligible to receive PEBT, granted they meet the additional eligibility requirements. All right, another COVID kind of related FAQ. What if our school's attendance data is not specific to COVID? And this, certainly can be the case for larger school districts, for smaller school districts, and all of those in between. If your school district does not have data that represents COVID-related absences, you are allowed to include any excused absence of 5 consecutive days or greater and presume that to be a COVID-related absence. So if you have within a month a student that missed at least 5 consecutive days or maybe more, you can presume that that's COVID-related, and as long as the other eligibility requirements are met, that student could be issued benefits for that month. Okay, and one final FAQ here that's COVID-related before we move on to talking about the portal. Can partial day absences be uploaded into the portal? Yes, absolutely. Partial days are optional, and some student information systems, generate absences that way. Others don't. It's very much up to you in reporting data in a way that is less burdensome, and hopefully you can pull this directly from your student information system. You'll see once you navigate into the portal and look at the data upload requirements or instructions, you'll notice that up to 3 decimal points are allowed for these partial days. I'm going to take a quick look at the chat here. And we'll be sure to address all of these questions additionally at the end to ensure everyone has an answer. Okay. Thanks to Katie and our team members for being on top of all of those questions coming in. We'll move ahead with portal upload. So for P-EBT for 21-22, we will continue to use the same process that has been used in the past, and that is the process of uploading data into the NDE portal using the P-EBT data collection. You will select the month, benefits, upload the file, and then check for errors. You may remember from summer 2021 P-EBT that the month selections were replaced by just a kind of a general summer P-EBT header. Because we're moving back into benefits being issued during the school year, you'll see again the months, specific unique months that are open under that drop-down menu, and you can provide an upload for each of those unique months into the portal. There are a couple places that you can find the data requirements and upload instructions reference document. The first is in the portal. When you're able to navigate there, you'll see in the top right-hand corner a link to this document. You'll also be able to access these instructions using or navigating to our Nutrition Services homepage. And this document outlines each of the required data elements for upload and includes some other kind of helpful hints, pointers, and just general directions for getting these uploads into the portal successfully. We're also excited to share that starting today, the P-EBT data collection has been reopened, and schools that have data that they're ready to upload can go in and start doing that as soon as this webinar has concluded. The DRE team worked really hard to not just update the months and other drop-down menus for your upload, but they also have tried to fix a couple bugs, and so we're hoping the system works a little faster, a little more smoothly, but we really appreciate all of their work on making sure the portal's up and ready to go for you today. Few data details, and here again you can find this information in that instruction guide related to portal uploads. These files need to be a .csv file type to be eligible for upload. You'll notice that each month should be uploaded individually with the students listed on those uploads that qualify for benefits. If you have a month that no students at your school district qualified for benefits, you do not have to provide an upload. The only time you'll need to go in and upload data is for a month or months that you have students that qualify. The one new data requirement in place for this year, 21-22, is a column that you'll notice is headed by days absent or remote from COVID. You might remember during previous rounds of P-EBT, there was a column that asked for student quarantine or remote student data. Those columns have been erased and replaced by this days absent, as it's how we will move forward and outline the different benefit types that are available. Okay, so frequently asked questions, portal upload. Can files be uploaded early? And the answer is yes, that data can be uploaded early into the portal, but it will not be issued until the first issuance date for that benefit month. We'll move now to the issuance calendar, and I think that this will make a little bit more sense once you can see these dates uploaded, these upload dates and issuance dates as well. Okay, so this is the issuance calendar for the 21-22 P-EBT program. So on the left side, you'll see the benefit months. And so on that top left cell, the corrected 21-22 or 2021 summer P-EBT benefits are listed first. And these are files that we had been collecting for a couple months actually that will be all issued out on March 11th. So starting on that second row, you'll notice we start with August, September, and October. We ask that schools upload benefits for those months by March 18th. We will send that data onto DHHS by March 23rd. And then those benefits will be issued out, either sent to families through cards or uploaded digitally to pre-existing cards on the 20th of April. I'll let you take a minute to also look and see what the rest of the year looks like. related to benefit months, the timeline for getting those benefits uploaded, and when your households will actually see these funds issued to cards or sent to their address in the form of a new card. DHHS makes every effort to issue funds to pre-existing cards to ensure that families can get their benefit amounts as quickly as possible, but there are certain situations that require new cards to be sent out. All right. We will move on here to another frequently asked question related to the issuance calendar. And this is, when will benefits uploaded after the issuance date be issued to the households? And so all of the data, similar to what has been done in previous years, will be issued on a rolling timeline. And so you can see on the example here, let's say your SFA successfully uploaded September 2021 data into the portal on May 1st of 2022. And so this would be after the initial submission deadline for September data, which means those benefits would actually be issued on June 16th, which is the next available issuance date. Go back here to the issuance calendar so you can see that spelled out a little bit more clearly. So we ask for September data by the 18th of March, but if you aren't able to meet that deadline, you can see that there's 3 more opportunities for issuance after the April 20th date. We do ask, that you provide us the data in as timely fashion as possible. We do know you have a lot on your plate though, and try to be understanding of all the work that you're trying to get done right now. So we will constantly be issuing out any benefits that are outstanding on those issuance days there on the right. All right. We will dive now into the reconsideration process, and this is a procedure and process that DHHS has been working hard to finalize, and it's really in place for families that want to make a claim to DHHS for a number of reasons. You'll see 2 listed here. It might be because their student is not receiving the benefits that they might have been expected or are expecting to receive, or it could be that the benefit amount that went onto their card was less than what they expected to see. The family initiates this process, and in the coming slides, there will be some contact information for you to share with those households should they wish to get this reconsideration process started. All right, so step 1 here for reconsideration, the family is going to contact DHHS to get this process started. You'll see the contact information listed on the bottom of this slide. DHHS is going to ask that the family provides this data to them: the parent first and last name, student first and last name, student date of birth, the school name, the district, and then any other comments or specifics that the parent has and wants to share with DHHS related to this request. Again, this is information the household will be providing to DHHS, and it is not the school's responsibility to initiate, complete, or really take part in step 1 here. It's on the family to get this process started and initiate the work with DHHS. All right, so step 2, that's when DHHS is going to share the information that they've gathered with us, with NDE. And we are going to then be following up with the school food authority that child or children attend, they're enrolled at. And we will have a couple questions for you that will help determine eligibility for benefits. You'll see those questions listed here in orange. We'll ask if your school participates in the National School Lunch Program. We'll inquire about that specific student. Were they approved for free or reduced meals? And if so, what is the date that they became eligible for free or reduced meal prices? Did the school have a COVID-related absence, closure, or reduced attendance for at least 5 consecutive days? So in briefer terms, when did the school level eligibility requirement be met by the school that student attends? And we'll ask for a little bit more specifically the actual date that requirement was met. And then lastly, we'll dive back into that particular student and we'll ask about that student's absences within the month that the parent has inquired about. We are looking for a specific number of days to determine then if a student might be eligible to receive P-EBT benefits through this reconsideration process. Our last step, step 3, will be that we will share the information that you've provided us with to DHHS, and there will be 2 different kind of results here based on the response from you and our collaboration with DHHS. So if the student was or students were excluded, they will be added to the next issuance as seen in the issuance schedule, and those benefits will be issued. But if based on the feedback we get from the school, the student, certainly does not qualify for benefits, DHHS will communicate that information with the household and with the family. All right, so now on your screen, and I'll leave it here for just a second so you can maybe, if you want to take a screenshot, again, we're going to be saving these slides and posting them to the homepage. But we hope that this is helpful information both for you and any households that might be calling in and asking you questions about P-EBT. You'll see the NDE phone number and email address. And we are certainly the best resources. If you have, I should have added this as a bullet, but if you have any questions about eligibility, we're a great resource for that, along with correcting any data that you might have uploaded into the portal that has since changed, and that could include a guardian changing for a student, that could include a change of address, or any other modifications needing to take place with that data. We are the best resource for that. You'll also see contact information for DHHS listed below, both the phone number and then an email address. DHHS can help your families if they're having card issues, anything from not being able to activate their card, having trouble with the PIN. DHHS is very helpful with those requests, along with that reconsideration process. And again, we want to focus on the fact that that process for reconsideration needs to be initiated by the family. And you providing this information is really, the greatest assistance you can provide for them. You do not need to get that process started. It really is up to the households to ensure that that happens. I am going to stop sharing my screen here. What I'd like to do is ensure that I can provide you an outline of the actual benefit levels and the amounts that you can anticipate your households to be receiving based on the number of days absent. So I'm going to stop my share here and I'll get this screen pulled up for you. As I'm doing that, Katie, are there any questions that you think that we could share on a larger scale for the group that others might be interested in learning the answers to?
Yeah, we have had some similar questions. I think just sort of getting a revisit of a couple of slides. So I'm going to go figure out which slide numbers those were, Jenna, and maybe you could reshare those after you're finished giving us a look at what you're preparing now. I think it'll help answer some of the questions we've got.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Max. We already have some people who've uploaded some test files, and we do have a bug we need to look at. So we will get that fixed this afternoon here. I may just pull the link down the P-EBT site until it gets fixed. Or leave it up, but I would recommend you don't upload a file until tomorrow at this point. I'll go ahead and pull the link down just so it's clear when it's fixed.
Perfect. Thanks, Max. All right. Navigating to the benefit levels slide. Just want to ensure that everyone has access to this important detail before you start to issue out these benefits. As part of the kind of benefit levels, we also want to focus on it not being the responsibility of the school to determine what benefit level the student falls at. What will happen is that our office, as we receive the data, will automatically ensure that students receive the correct benefit levels based on the number of days within that month that you've indicated they have a COVID-related absence. So here are the 3 distinct benefit levels. You'll see level 1 has a monthly payout of $21 per month. This averages a 3-day benefit, and this benefit will be issued to students that have 5 or less COVID-related absences within a single month. Level 2 is a $71 payout, and this is per month again. Average of 10-day benefit, and these are for those students that have more than 5 COVID-related absences, but less than 16 within 1 month's time. Level 3, this last level, has the highest payout of $121 per month. This is an average of a 17-day benefit, and these go to students that have missed 16 or more COVID, they have missed 16 or more days within the month due to a COVID-related absence. Here again, it is not up to the schools to determine which benefit level the student fits into. It's simply your job to report on the upload form how many days the student has missed, and then it's up to NDE and DHHS to correctly place each student within the level that they qualify for per month. Okay, and Max has added to the chat the blank template link, and this will be helpful as you start to collect this data for 21-22, ensuring you're using the right template, all of the correct headers within that spreadsheet to ensure that you're providing NDE with the correct data and can have that upload go through successfully the first time. Okay. Katie, any specific slides that you'd like me to navigate to be helpful?
Yeah, great. Can you go to the one, I think it might be slide number 7, where it talks about school level eligibility and how any free, reduced, or paid eligible student with the 5 consecutive COVID-related absence days. Yeah, we had a few questions about this, and I could go recite all of them, but can you re-explain this to us again, and then maybe show the calendar also to illustrate how that, I guess, individual student 5 consecutive day absence correlates to the free and reduced students in that building who also experience any number of days of COVID-related absence are also eligible for PEBT?
Definitely.
Okay,
so
thanks.
we could think about this, and maybe everyone could frame it thinking about their unique school buildings. So there are some school districts that are going to have one building that all of their students are housed in. If that is you, if that applies, you would need to have one enrolled student, and that could be a student that's free, paid, reduced, any of those categories. You just need one student to be out for 5 consecutive days due to COVID. And that in turn makes the rest or all of your enrolled students potentially able to receive PEBT benefits. For those on the call that have multiple school buildings, you can think of it that you need to have at least one student in each of those unique buildings that is out for 5 consecutive days for COVID or a COVID-related reason to meet this school level requirement. So it's really specific to each school building that you have. And if one student is out for those 5 consecutive days within that building can then move almost on to step 2, which is that's more specific student level eligibility requirement.
Hey, Jenna,
yeah.
Is that a per month, or do we meet this one time for the year and we're good? That's been, I think, the question.
Yeah, certainly. That's a really good question. Nope, it's not per month. If this requirement is met once, from that point on, for the remainder of the 21-22 school year, students within that school building can receive PEBT benefits.
So that's where I'm having an issue. So we need to go back, find out when the first student met it. So if it wasn't until October 15th, then do we upload all of the absences for the free and reduced in all of October, or do I have to figure out if those were October 15th on?
So you'll want to be specific with the date. And like you said, October 15th is a good example. So any students, once that eligibility requirement is met, and so you thought, in that example, Patty, that student's consecutive day absence started on the 15th of October, all other students that are absent after the 15th that are also free and reduced, they would be the ones qualifying for these P-EBT benefits. I'll use this calendar here on the screen as an example too, that's similar. And so a student at the school building, they met the 5 consecutive day requirement. Here you can see that ended on the 8th of September. What you will do when you're determining benefit eligibility is to actually go back to the first day that 5 consecutive day absence started. And this is the date, in this example, September 1st, that all students within the school building would possibly be able to receive P-EBT benefits if they meet the requirement of being free or reduced and have COVID-related absences. Those absences, though, would need to fall after this initial date of benefit issuance, in this example, the 1st of September.
So Jenna, just to reiterate, because I was on the thing, thought that this was a month-to-month thing. So I have a student that started it in my one building in August. Then for the rest of the school year in that building, the free and reduced kids that are absent for COVID can get it.
Correct.
Correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
And yeah, Lois bring up a good point of how that might be different from one school building to the next. If you have multiple school buildings within your district, one school building, might qualify on the 1st of September. Another might not qualify until the end of October. There might be another school building that, never had a student that was out for 5 consecutive days due to COVID. So each school building, you're going to have to approach this initial qualification date differently based on when a student met the 5 consecutive day requirement.
I think Lois asked a related question to one you answered just a few moments ago, and it was, let's pretend a building qualifies because a student has 5 consecutive absences related to COVID. So that makes all other free and reduced students in that building eligible as of October 1st, but a family doesn't submit a meal application that verifies they qualify for free or reduced price meals until maybe November. October 15th. We want to keep this in the same month. The effective date of the meal application that the household submitted is the day that they submitted the application. So if they submitted it on October 15th, but the free and reduced students in the building are technically eligible to receive P-EBT beginning October 1st if they had COVID-related absences, the household that submitted not until October 15th, those students are also not eligible to receive P-EBT benefits until October 15th, which is the day they submitted the application that verified they're eligible to receive free or reduced price meals. And then a similar question, Jenna. Angela, I'm sorry, I can't see your last name, but you asked about a family that did not complete a meal application in any month during school year 21-22. The question is, would they not qualify for P-EBT? And I think the answer to that is if they had another recent school year where they did submit an application that validated free or reduced price meal benefits, then you would utilize that eligibility information and carry it over. We understand that because of 2 years of no cost meals, that it probably discouraged or, reduced the perceived benefit of taking the time to submit an application among parents or guardians of your enrolled students. So if you have a recent school year, even going back to 1920, according to other P-EBT guidance that's been issued, that eligibility can be carried forward. However, if a family submits a paper application in this year, or even in school year 2021, where their reported income exceeded the levels to be eligible to receive free or reduced price meals, right? Those students on that application are going to be documented as eligible for paid. That's the most recent application you have on file for them like I said, it demonstrates they're eligible for paid price meals. Therefore, you know, they're not going to be included in the data you submit for P-EBT eligible students. So utilize the information you have that's the most recent in determining which students are eligible for free or reduced price meals.
Thanks, Katie. I see a couple other questions coming in about the COVID-related absence. And so let's see here. To find this question here. Okay, so Carrie asked about if any sick absence counts or if it's just COVID-related absences, and it does need to be COVID-related. But as you can see on this slide, COVID-related doesn't necessarily mean or require that that student had COVID or even tested for COVID. It can be a reason that's COVID-related. And so like we talked about, it could be an exposure within a household. It could be because the parent is directing the student and they have let you, the school, know that this is because of COVID, that their student is absent. Or if you look at it from a larger school directed perspective, this can certainly and should include any days that the entire district might have been closed, an entire classroom was closed, a building closed, possibly, you know, due to staff shortages related to COVID, low student attendance rates due to COVID. So there's a lot of different options here with that COVID-related absence, but it does need to go back to COVID and cannot just be just a typical illness or just a sick day. We ask that you look for a little bit more specific information to tie it back to a COVID-related absence.
We have a question from Sherry that I did try to answer in the chat, but wanted to actually say it out loud. I think Sherry's question asks if this is similar to the summer P-EBT benefits that were issued, or there was a standard amount issued for the days that would have covered summer break, and that is not the case with this. You may have some students receive benefits one month and not the next because it is dependent upon their number of absence days related to COVID, you know, COVID caused absence for whatever reason. And Jenna did a nice job of outlining exactly what those might be. And for those that have asked about the slides and today's training, we've had that question a few times in the chat. I know Jenna plans to post the recording of this training along with other resources, including the slides that she's covered today. And we anticipate being able to get that finished and up on the website by the middle of the week. And I also think, I don't want to speak for you, Jenna, but I know you would send an email to folks to let them know that it's available so you know where to find it and when it's up so you can go have a look.
And I did want to highlight here too, Carrie asked a good follow-up question about absences needing to be consecutive after a building has qualified. And that's a really good question. So that 5-day absence to qualify a building needs to be consecutive. Individual student absences that are COVID related after that point do not need to be consecutive. And so you might have a student that missed 2 or 3 days throughout a month, but those days, you know, maybe it was once a week or 2 days one week and one the next. Those would all count into these different benefit levels that you see here on the screen. Those do not have to be consecutive absences when you're looking at the individual student information.
And I'm going to toss a question from Linda over to you, Jenna. She asks if a student was absent on August 30th and did not return until September 9th, would the free and reduced eligible students be eligible for P-EBT for August? So there's a little bit of nuance there. I was going to let you address that.
So Katie, can you tell me, I have my calendar pulled up here. I'm just looking, you said it was August 30th.
Yep, and didn't return until September 9th. So we have the 5 days, I think the 5 school days in a row, qualification met. Would the free and reduced students be eligible to receive P-EBT for absences in August?
So starting August 30th. And so the first day that that student that met the 5-day consecutive requirement was absent is the first day that benefits could start for the remainder. And that's a good example there too, because that time frame covers a Saturday, a Sunday, and then Labor Day as well. And so it's important to remember in that 5 consecutive day period, you should not be including any weekends or pre-planned school holidays. Some days to consider though is if you have a date that maybe fits into one of those school directed COVID closure dates. I'm going to try to navigate back here to this screen. Those could be counted in to the 5 consecutive day. If there was a school directed absence, that certainly would be a date that would qualify to help your school building qualify for PEBT.
Our next one is from Brenna and Kozad, and they use Power School. And I don't think this is a question maybe you and I are meant to answer, but I thought if there might be other Power School using schools in attendance today, you could send Brenna a message or a quick chat, and then maybe you could form like a technical assistance and support group, because I'm honestly not familiar with how that software works. And Jenna, do you know anything about how a school could utilize its features to get this information, or have a different suggestion other than just pooling the brains of the folks who do utilize that?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, Katie, that I'm not the best resource, I think, with Power School. I will say that we had another request from another school that uses Infinite Campus. That was a similar request to maybe try to understand how to best utilize that system and pull out this data that we're asking you to provide. And so I do think, we can certainly help connect those that are interested in sharing resources and information. And we could certainly also look to see if we can add any, discoveries that you have to our website as resources. But yeah, I'm not super familiar with either of those data programs. And I do think one thing, that some schools have been utilizing is and we might have some of these staff members on the call, is if you do have a data specialist or someone at your school district or even in your ESU that works closely with data, they may be a really good resource for trying to pull the data out that we're asking for. They really have a good understanding of those programs. So, look into those other contacts and resources if you have them to maybe help you with this request of pulling data.
I could say about Power School, I know last year, I think there was a standard extract format that was being passed around that people were using. I don't know if anyone's had time to do that yet for the 21-22 format, but I expect a lot of districts will be using extracts from Power School or whatever their SIS is. Some of them people can set up themselves, some the vendor has to get involved, but so maybe wait and see on that. Definitely if anyone on this call is not the data steward person at their district that's typically working with data extracts and sending data up to NDE, then definitely get in contact with that person at your district to see if they can help with that.
And Jenna, Lori Long asked a question about a student qualifying for free meals in 2021 by an application. They didn't submit an application in school year 21-22, wondering if they're eligible for PEBT if they had enough absences, and how many years are schools' food authorities supposed to go back in determining, what eligibility can be used to document PEBT or for the purpose of PEBT benefits. And I'll put a link to a Q&A issued by the USDA. And I just wanted to make sure you all know number 11 helps address the question that Lori asked. And if schools are providing meals through the Seamless Summer option, which is what you all are doing to provide no-cost meals to students in school year 21-22, this you can utilize free and reduced price eligibility data from the most recent prior year for which such data is available, is how the answer to that is worded. So for Lori's specific example, yes, those students that submitted an application verifying their eligibility for a free or reduced price meal would be eligible to receive PEBT, of course, as Lori mentioned, also having met the requirements for school level and individual student level benefits to be issued. Like I said, I'll put that in the chat. We'll make sure to include those kinds of resources with the things that Jenna posts in addition to these slides and the recording today.
Thanks, Katie. Casey has been very patient with us and has had her hand raised for a minute here. Casey, what question do you have?
Thank you. I just want to clarify, there was a slide that discussed COVID-related absence, not the one that, showed the kind of school level, but it talked about when a district does not keep absences with a COVID-specific absence, how we would go about doing that. I know just from our perspective, we don't have a COVID-specific absence. We have maybe comments on an absence, and we have COVID symptoms and positivity in our health tab. But at one point in the year, we even stopped keeping symptoms in our health tab because our nurses could not keep up with entering that information. So we're kind of all over the place on what we could use. We frankly would not have the ability to go through every line of a student's absence and try to figure out if it was COVID related by looking at the comments. So I want to be clear about this. We can use any excused absence for the qualifier, but we cannot use it when we're reporting students for payment.
So for the qualifier, that's again where we're going to ask that it be a COVID-related absence. I think I'm hearing you when you're saying that, your data isn't, it's not that your data isn't specific enough, but it's not feasible or possible to collect that specific of data for, I know at OPS, it's not realistic and it's not a possibility. And so I think that the same general idea could be applied to the qualifier along with the secondary students then that would individually qualify for P-EBT benefits. And this might be one too that Katie and I will want to talk through a little bit and get back to you on, Casey. But to me, when you have a student that would meet that 5 consecutive day requirement, the screen that I have up now, that slide, indicates that for those that can't collect COVID specific data, any student that has a 5 consecutive day absence would be assumed that that is due to COVID or is a COVID related absence. And so taking that idea for the qualifier, that would simply mean at the first point during the year at each school that a student missed 5 consecutive days, then that would make that school building eligible for P-EBT benefits for those students that would meet the additional qualifications. And the additional qualifications here would be free or reduced and having at least a 5 consecutive day absence to receive benefits during that month.
While also applying doesn't have to be 5 consecutive days for those students who are qualifying after the initial qualifier. Do those have to be COVID specific absences? Here's where I'm at. Our district is CEP this year, so potentially we could be reporting every student once there's a qualifying absence. We could be reporting every student who's absent for an excused absence in each month. And I know that's not the intent, but it is to some degree where our data is at. And my guess is that as the largest district with the most students, we're probably going to have the largest number of students that get uploaded. So I'm just a little concerned with how we would go about doing it. I know Max mentioned maybe the SIS might have a report to do this, but there is one, but it will not work based on the qualifications that I'm seeing here.
And Jenna, this is Melissa. I think I might be able to jump in here and help a little bit. I think once you've met the initial qualifier, right? So assuming that we've got one person that qualifies the school. If you're not tracking individually each specific absence, whether or not it's COVID or not, then I think you can use this assumption and assume that if a student has at least 5 consecutive days or more that they were out, then that would be COVID related. the way that I understand it and the way that I take it is if you're not tracking that and you cannot tell if, you know, one student was absent for one day, you can't determine if that was COVID, then they wouldn't qualify for the PEBT because we don't know that it's COVID. So in your case, you would only have those students that had met those 5 consecutive days and were presuming or assuming that it was COVID related.
Okay, that, I appreciate the way you just described it because that makes sense. Maybe I was just missing it before, but
Hello,
Sure.
how are you?
So it is 3 o'clock now, and I think we will continue to stay on and help answer questions and look here in the chat if others still have, you know, questions or concerns that they're thinking about. If you need to get going, we appreciate your time and especially appreciate your effort in providing this PEBT data to us. Like we said before, this would not be possible without the many, many hours that everyone has spent on this project, and that just seems to keep going. And so we just really appreciate all of the work that you're doing to get these benefits issued out to your students. Again, if you want to stay on the call, we'll continue to respond to these chat questions. And if anyone has a question that they would like to pose to the entire group, please feel free to unmute. But as we're all busy and have stuff to do, we very much understand if you need to log off and get back to the rest of your day. We'll work to get the recorded version of this webinar up on the website by the end of the week, along with the slides. And we'll continue to try to put together some of these resources that will help answer these questions. And also want to highlight that if you have a unique situation or specific questions related to your school district, we're happy to meet individually or answer questions on a more individual basis to make sure you feel confident about the data upload.
Can I ask just one quick question? I put it in the chat, but there's so many on there. I was trying to find if it got answered or not, so I'm just going to ask it real quick. Can we just round up days, or do you want us to put 0.22 or whatever days? I rounded everything up. I just need to know if I need to go back and come up with percentages, or if I can just leave them with the rounded up.
Do you have a perspective or preference on that?
I think rounding up would technically probably be the most correct answer. If you think of it as a day missed. But
Thank you.
but yeah, you can, if you're sending us partial days too, that's fine also.
I've seen a couple questions also come through here on the chat that are, you know, asking if the specific student that is the qualifier, if there needs to be anything, you know, shared about who that is, or even any positive COVID information shared. And we want to ensure that to you and also to ensure to the households that confidential information about students like test status or you know, anything that is more specific than a COVID related absence is not shared. And so we simply ask for the student that you indicate the number of COVID related absence days. And that's the only piece of data that you need specific to that student that has any relation to COVID.
We have that question from Gail too about how snow days might impact the 5 consecutive school days. And they wouldn't be able to be included in the consecutive days because one of the big things about PEBT benefits eligibility is that if the student hadn't experienced the COVID-related absence, then that student would have been in school with access to meals. Meals are not offered on non-school days, planned or unplanned. Therefore, we wouldn't count those in the 5 consecutive days to qualify the other students in that school building to be eligible to receive PEBT.
Amy has also asked if school districts are required to report this information. And, you know, our policy or our perspective has remained the same throughout all of these PEBT issuances, is that we appreciate the time and effort that it takes for you to upload this data. And we know that the households are benefiting from and appreciate these funds that are getting issued out to those that qualify. And so there is not necessarily a requirement from our office to provide this data to us and then to DHHS. But certainly some school districts, you know, can speak to some of the difficulties they've had in explaining to their households that they did not provide data to NDE, that this was not a program that they participated in. That can be challenging at some points, you know, when you're working with your households and your families. And so we are, you know, really hoping to be advocates for providing this data to us and also assisting you in that process the best that we can.
Ruth asked a question about having kind of like periodic COVID-related absences, probably because maybe COVID sort of spread throughout a household or amongst, you know, siblings in a household. And really in each month's data submission, Max, I hope you're still here, you would only have one row for each student where you would report their total absences for the month just one time. You wouldn't need to report in one row that Katie had 2 days of absences, and then in another row also for Katie that I had one more COVID-related absence day later in that month. You'd lump the total of the COVID-related absences together in the data that you report. So that was a good question to ask that I'm sure other data folks who will be combining or compiling and submitting the data were also wondering. So thanks for asking that. Carol asked a question about directly certified students as well, and you probably saw in the chat that I'm going to reread the Q&A about the benefits for school year 21-22 to see if there is a clear answer on that, and I'll make sure Jenna knows that so she can post it with other resources, including what we've covered today. And then Amy asked a good question that I think you can help answer effectively, Jenna. Did we cover this one? If a student is absent for 2 days in February and then 3 days in March, do they qualify since the absences cover 2 different months?
So yes, as long as that student qualified for free or reduced lunch, you know, in both of those months that they were absent, for those individual student absences, they do not need to be consecutive. And in this example, you would provide an upload into the portal with that student's data for both of those months, and then indicating the number of days per month that they had those COVID-related absences. And that student in this example would receive benefits for both months based on the number of days they were absent.
Thank you, Jenna. And then Sheila asked a question, or posed sort of a question, saying she's not sure if families retained their previously issued PEBT card. She wondered if a card is automatically issued to families if they qualify for the benefit. And Melissa and the other DHHS folks are going to be really good at answering this question.
Yes, Melissa, I can definitely answer that. Yes, if the family has kept their card and they received benefits in the past, we are doing everything that we can to make sure that benefits go back on that card. The problem is if there are any changes to that household, such as, you know, parent guardian name change, address change, anything like that that's different, then it's not going to match with their previous card. So then that would generate a new card. So if benefits are not, general rule of thumb that I would share, if benefits are not deposited on a previous card, if something had changed, then they will probably get a new card. Now, if they've lost their card or they don't have that previous card, then we've got, you know, they can reach out to us. We've got processes in place to get them a new card reissued and do all of that fun stuff. I won't get into all of those details now, but that is an option there. So yes, it should go back on their card unless there were changes. Then they would get a new card.
My question was, if I don't know who has cards and who doesn't. So if a family didn't qualify in the past or is a new student,
Then
that
they
is simply done I don't need to worry about whether they have a card or not when I'm submitting my
Nope.
data. Is that
Nope.
correct?
That is correct. You do not need to worry about that. We will determine that. And if they had never had a card, then we'll send them a new one.
Great. That's what I wanted to make sure of. Thank you.
Kelly asked if students have to have a positive COVID test, or maybe one of their family members needs to provide that kind of documentation, and that is not the case for eligibility for these benefits. You don't have to ask for any kind of medical information like that. I don't know if you have anything to add to my answer, Jenna. It was pretty short.
No, I mean, I think, yeah, we're looking to not reduce the burden, but to make this as simple as we can. And clearly it's not a simple process, but yeah, certainly no additional documentation. We're really going off of the data that the schools provide us and using that to get these benefits issued. I do see a question from Andrew asking about remote learners and also bringing up a good point about meal access. And so his specific question was, can you talk about remote learners again? And so remote learners would qualify for these PEBT benefits, granted that they meet the building requirements. So they attend or enrolled at school at a building that has qualified. A student has met that 5 consecutive day absent period. And that remote student also needs to qualify for free or reduced price meals, and then have absences, or in this case, have opted into remote learning for a COVID related reason. The second part of Andrew's question was related to students being eligible for benefits if they had a chance to pick up meal packages. For his exact example was, picking up a meal through SSO. And as has been the case with previous rounds of PEBT, even if a student had access to a meal, if they meet the PEBT requirements, they would be able to be issued benefits for, in this case, that day. And so even if a school provided maybe a pickup meal service or an option for a student that's remote to come in and get meals, they could still be provided with these PEBT benefits because they are not physically present in the school building during the school day.
Yeah, and Andrew, though you offered, in other schools that may also have offered pick up or grab and go meals to remote learners, you know that you probably didn't have full participation, from families or students who utilize that meal option, because we know barriers exist in getting, parents' availability to pick up meals for their kids who are learning remotely. So that's one of the ways my brain sort of helped make sense of it, because initially I was like, well, they have access. You're providing meals if they want them. But honestly, I think that you probably saw last year when you did SFSP offered maybe more expansive remote learning options to students than you did this year, that your participation was dramatically decreased among those students that were learning remotely or on the days that they were learning remotely. So like I said, that just helped my brain accept that you can still offer PEBT benefits to remote students, though you were giving them the option to pick meals up from a meal location. And Linda has a great question. Others might be feeling the same way that she is. I know it took me a solid month to grasp this, Linda. And we've been working on this plan for a long time and have certainly had lots of processing time for our brains, my brain primarily. So Jenna, can you go over it just one more time? Let it sink in for everybody who's still trying to absorb this information, I guess, in response to Linda's question.
Certainly, and I think Jamie later in the chat had a good way of explaining it in more simple terms. So the school building, whether, let's see, Linda, whether you have one or multiple school buildings, each of those individual school buildings needs to have an enrolled student that is out for 5 consecutive days due to COVID. That student can be free, reduced, or paid. It just needs to be a student enrolled at that school. Once the school building has had a student that meets that requirement, free and reduced students that are also enrolled in that school building can be issued benefits for days that they are out for a COVID-related reason. And so the first student that meets the school qualifier does not have to be free and reduced. They simply need to be enrolled. But to actually receive those COVID benefits, a student would need to be free and reduced and have a COVID-related absence while attending a school that has met the school level requirement.
Thank you. And Amy asked a good question. I know that you and maybe even Melissa can support in an answer, is about how families know this benefit's even available to them.
Yeah, so we've been working collaboratively with DHHS on some communication templates that we'll add to our website, likely at the same time as the slides in the webinar. And these communication templates are in place for schools to use and to distribute out to their households to let them know that these P-EBT benefits might be coming and to give them a better idea of who qualifies and who does not. And so we will send out a notification once we have more of these resources available for you. We hope that you take advantage, of those communication templates and really kind of just outlines for email, text, Twitter, all of those different platforms you use to communicate with your students in your households to notify them of P-EBT. So then if they do receive a card in the mail, they have some sort of idea what it is, the importance and work behind it. And can certainly help address questions that you might get to and reduce the number of calls or emails into your office.
And in addition to that, Jenna, I'll add to DHHS is working on a press release. So we will release a press release that will explain or have some information in it. But you're right, the eligibility requirements are a little bit complicated. But I think really what it boils down to is it's free and reduced lunch kiddos who miss school due to COVID-related absences. Those are the main eligibility requirements. If you've got families that, are meeting those, and we can dig into more as to, why or why not they would be eligible. But if they're not free and reduced and they didn't have a COVID-related absence, then they're not going to get P-EBT benefits.
Casey, does Melissa's last a couple of sentences help address the question you asked in the chat? You're at OPS Omaha Public, which is CEP, starting this school year, meaning all students are eligible for the benefits as long as they have, well, I should say the buildings in which students attend are eligible based on whether or not they met the criteria that Jenna mentioned early in the training. So I think it's a matter of explaining, first of all, the building has to become eligible and this is how that happens. And then saying, because we're now a CEP school, which I'm sure has been communicated to the households of students enrolled in your district. And then it's really dependent. Yeah, go ahead, Casey.
I think the CEP part, the lunch eligibility part will not be the problem. It will be more about trying to explain to a family that they maybe didn't call the right person about their COVID absence. They just submitted an illness absence, or that they don't qualify because they were only out for 3 days and no one in that school we had so many calls last year because people simply didn't understand why they should qualify. So we did a lot of checking, on inquiries that said, wait, can you check on this student? Why did they not qualify? Because nobody knew why. They just knew that, their neighbor or their friend was paid. And so they figured they would be eligible. I just see that being a similar thing this year, but even more difficult to describe to someone why they should or should not qualify. Additionally, we were able to report a lot of students last year. And so, because we had a lot of remote students. This year, it's going to be much reduced, but you're going to have a lot more people expecting payment while not qualifying, but not understanding why. So I just see a bit of a logistical question and answer. I mean, the process of going to DHHS and then to NDE and then NDE to us, I think it could be a pretty big, it could be a big undertaking just for our families.
Yeah, and we have, and I think there were slides included. Sorry, I missed most of Jenna's presentation. I apologize, but we have built up or beefed up, if you will, our reconsideration process for that exact situation. So if there are families that you're not reporting, but they're like, yes, I swear my kid was out for COVID, you know, we've got, we can have them attest to that absence. And then if the school can just say, yes, the kid wasn't here, the family says it's COVID, then we can go with that and we can continue to issue benefits. So we've made some updates to that, hoping that will help, but I hear you. I know it's still going to be.
So, and unfortunately, I end up being the person in OPS that looks at that because I'm reporting all of it. And I'm just not seeing a situation where I'm going to be able to answer all of those and investigate all of those in any kind of timely manner. I mean, it was a struggle sometimes to, you know, get through the emails that Jenna was able to send on households and those pieces. And that was, I think it's going to be, that was subdued probably compared to what we might have this year. So.
Okay. Well, yeah. And Casey, we can definitely work too. And sorry, I hope I'm not over speaking here, Jenna and Katie, but I mean, if it would be, we can look at doing something like, instead of sending you individual names as they come in, maybe we can compile them all and send you a weekly list or something like that, so that they're not coming in one at a time, and it's harder to keep track of. So, I mean, we can always try to do something like that if we need to as well.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys' support. Thank you. I did have one other question on the chances of pushing this. I imagine that these deadlines are pretty much set in stone based on payment periods, but just given when this call is, you know, even Infinite Campus, I was on a call last week and the guidance had just come out the day before. And Infinite Campus was saying, okay, they need to review the guidance to see if their report will do what the guidance is asking for. At this point, it does not. You have to, you know, kind of write your own ad hoc. So for those using, you know, Infinite Campus or Power School or whatever it might be, I don't know if there's really been enough time for them to even react to be able to create this so that districts can use it. Now I have the ability to pull information, you know, using SQL and otherwise, but I'm even seeing this as this is a multi-step process, even for me. So I'm just, maybe other districts don't have as many students they're going to have to report, but it's going to be an undertaking just over the next 2 weeks to make sure I'm getting what needs to be reported for the first period. And 1 week is spring break. And so that will impact my availability, but that's a personal problem.
Well, I think you covered it, Jenna, in the, you know, data submission or benefit issuance. And I think if they aren't able to meet the first submission deadline, then for early months in the school year, submit it when you can, and those benefits will be issued the next available issuance date. So it's not like you're leaving the benefits on the table by, you know, just being unable because of the massive amount of data you're working with. It's not, it doesn't mean that students are going to miss out on receiving the benefits. It just be a little bit later than you see in the issuance calendar here. Does that help answer or address your concern a little bit, Casey?
Yeah, I think it does certainly, and we knew that, you know, throughout the course of last year we could continue to report students that we missed, and so that's obviously great. I just certainly if we ran into a number of situations where individuals were not being paid on the timeline expressed by DHHS, and so then, you know, that's when we would also start getting calls. You know, why haven't I gotten paid yet? Well, you were submitted at a later deadline. So again, it just becomes a communication issue, trying to make sure that the families understand why they would be getting paid. And I think that got a lot better at the end of last year. So maybe that works better this year as well. So I appreciate that, you know, we can continue to report if we have missed people. So
Andrew asked a question about basically receiving administrative funds for the time that folks in schools are investing in submitting, you know, gathering and submitting data. I need to read the Q&A unless Jenna or Melissa knows the answer to that off the top of their head.
I need to go back to through the guidance. I haven't seen anything related to administrative costs, but we can take a look.
Specific. Well, I think best practice, Andrew, and others who are still here, is if you can, track the time that the folks involved in PEBT are spending on the project. Then if you need it later, because you'll be able to be eligible for additional funds, you have the information you need. And I think that that also helps address some of the challenges we know you experience because of not having guidance from the USDA at an earlier point in time to be able to plan and prepare for what you're going to need to keep track of. At least this is one way we can give you guidance now. Go ahead and track it. You might not use the information, but if you end up needing to, at least you'll have it. So we understand that it is a big challenge to be able to gather retroactively information that you wish you'd known in advance, because you could have made it more complete and easier for you. We are with you there and definitely empathize with the difficult situation and time consuming, I guess, mess of this project.
Melissa, could you talk a little bit about the role of the DHS call center and maybe, I guess, explain what that is to those that are on the call and how they assist and help in getting these benefits issued?
Yeah, definitely. And yes, and I appreciate that comment, because that's one thing that we have been continuously working on, is that communication and what they are communicating out to these families and how they are communicating it, because we are very well aware of this endless loop that I call it, that I feel like some families have gotten stuck in. They'll call DHHS and DHHS sends them back to the school and the school sends them to DHHS, and then they're back and forth and around we go. So we're very well aware of that. So we've got, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dawn, I think it's 5 or 6 staff that are dedicated to answering PEBT phone calls as they come in. Because of the volume of the calls, it wasn't enough for us to keep up on our own, so we had to pull in some help. We do meet with that group on a weekly basis to listen to calls and to provide them feedback. We also share updates with them daily, weekly as they come in. I think one of the biggest the pieces that I've heard is the schools will say, yes, we've submitted our data, which is true because you have submitted your data, let's say on February 15th, but then we have to wait. It's not an immediate turnaround from the time that the schools submit their data until we're issuing benefits, right? There are multiple steps in between. So I think when a family hears a school say, yeah, we submitted data, they expect for there to be benefits. So then when they call the call center and they say, well, we haven't got the list yet because we can't share the data. We don't share the data that the schools or Indeed data provides. We share what the benefits that are issued. So we're sharing the issuance data, not that initial data. So we can't provide that to the folks answering the phones until the benefits have actually gone out the door and we have that report back as far as what was issued. So I think that's what causes a lot of that confusion. So one thing that I would suggest or put out there is, as you're talking to the families, maybe remind them that yes, we've submitted our data, but they're still working on it. So your issuance will be at the next available issuance date, and there might be a little bit of a gap there, and that might help with some of that. But that's what we've got in place. I mean, for open communication is really all we can do. So if there is a specific situation or something, let us know. Like I said, we meet with them weekly and provide daily updates. So we put everything out there as soon as we can. Now, again, I'll say this just because I'm sure everyone's aware, we can tell them things until we're blue in the face, but actually getting them to do it is a little bit different. So we're kind of stuck up against that too, where we might say one thing over and over again, but if it gets lost, it might take us a while to get there. So that's kind of where we're stuck at. But does that help? And let me know if I missed anything.
Were they doing that last year?
Thanks, Melissa. Yep, I think that answered Chelsea's question. I'm looking through here to see if we have any other outstanding questions from those that are still on the call. I'm not seeing anything, nothing is popping out at us. We will do, though, a thorough review of all of these questions that were submitted via chat And even if we aren't able to specifically address everyone, what we will do is certainly incorporate these into the FAQs and make sure that all of these questions that we're kind of hearing from multiple schools are on that document and made available to reference if they should come up for you and be a question for you specifically.
I have a real quick question that just came up while I was looking through some of our attendance data. I have a student in August that had 4 full days, but on the 5th day, it was a partial day. I know Max had talked about like rounding up. So if I did that, it would be kind of 5 days. Would that count then for 5 days if I was rounding up for that partial day? Or would it, since it's only like 4.5, would that not count?
So I think I could speak for our team here that with rounding, I think as long as you're using consistent rounding practices for all of your students, you know, that you would typically round up and that you would round up for other days that student might experience in a similar situation, that could count towards your 5 consecutive day requirement. You know, we would just ask that you keep those same practices and procedures in place so that benefits are distributed equally among your student body, Patricia. But yes, certainly in that case, you could round up. That would be the start for that school for those free and reduced students to potentially qualify for benefits.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
That's a good question. Any other outstanding questions? You could either enter those into the chat or unmute and share your question with the group. Okay, thanks everyone for those that are still here, an hour and a half of your time, which is very valuable time. Again, want to reiterate our thanks and appreciation for everything you're doing for your students, in particular PEBT. This is a tremendous benefit to all of these households that are receiving these funds, and it's truly thanks to you that this money is going out. Keep an eye on the Nutrition Services website, the homepage under PEBT resources for this presentation, along with additional resources. And yeah, we just, again, certainly appreciate your time and your effort to get, just like Casey's saying here in the chat, providing us with the best data that you can is really our request here, and that's going to look different from one school to the next, but all of the time and effort you put into it, we appreciate that no matter what it looks like. Thank you, everyone. Please let us know what questions you have, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.